Look closely at this street.
They look amazing.
Today,
We should get one.
millions of tourists wander through the Shambles in York, snapping photos of its charming, leaning timber frames and buying Harry Potter souvenirs. It's consistently voted Britain's most picturesque street. But if you know where to look, the stones beneath your feet tell a drastically different story. This isn't a fairy tale. It's a beautifully preserved monument to centuries of slaughter, disease, and religious execution. Beneath the charm hides a history stained in blood.
To understand the dark reality of this place, you have to look at the very architecture of the buildings. Notice how the upper floors project outward, leaning so far over the cobblestones that neighbors could practically shake hands from window to window across the street. While this design maximized living space, it served a much grimmer purpose here. It blocked out the sun and rain to keep the street below as cold as possible. Look closer, right beneath those overhanging timber jetties. Do you see those rusted metal hooks? Hundreds of years ago, you wouldn't see beautiful window displays or cheerful tourists. You would see carcasses of freshly slaughtered animals swinging in the cold air, hanging directly over the heavy wooden boards below. In Old English, these display shelves were called flesh hammels, literally meat shelves. This is the origin of the street's name. It was recorded in the Domesday Book of 1086 as just two humble butcher stalls, but it quickly evolved into the great flesh hammels, serving as the bloody heart of York's meat market for over 800 years. Even as the centuries rolled on, the trade grew. Walk past the medieval timber frames and you'll spot Georgian brick facades like number 43. If you look at the rainwater head, you can still see the initials of Solomon Preston, a prominent butcher registered here in the 1700s. These buildings look like a chaotic, beautiful mix of Tudor, Georgian, and Victorian history, held together by iron tie-bar discs along the walls. But behind these picturesque storefronts lay a hidden world of absolute filth.
Long before modern regulations and sanitary standards, there was no separation between where animals lived, where they died, and where people ate. Step through the original 15th century archway of number 37, and you can look into the brick infilled rear. These ancient beams are the skeletal remains of a medieval slaughterhouse. Livestock spent their final terrifying moments packed into these cramped backyards, waiting for the blade. Once the animals were killed, the real horror began. Look at the sloped floors beneath the storefronts, like number 31. The butchers would wash the blood, entrails, and waste straight out of their shops and into the street. It all collected in the iconic central cobbled channel running down the center of the road. This open gutter was only flushed out twice a week. Imagine walking through here centuries ago. The air wouldn't smell like sweets or coffee. It would be thick with the stench of rotting flesh, swarming with flies and rats. Today, thousands of tourists smile and snap selfies on these exact cobblestones, entirely unaware that they are standing in a place where a literal river of blood used to flow. This constant state of squalor made the Shambles a deadly breeding ground for disease. Entire families lived squeezed into the tight rooms directly above the slaughterhouses, breathing in the toxic air. Nearby churches like St. Crux and Holy Trinity were constantly filled with the bodies of the poor residents who succumbed to the horrific outbreaks of cholera and plague. But this environment of extreme filth actually triggered one of the greatest medical breakthroughs in human history. A young boy named John Snow was born just across the river in 1813. He walked these exact streets, witnessing the inescapable squalor of the Shambles. Those foundational experiences drove him to investigate how disease spreads, and in 1854 he finally solved the national mystery of cholera transmission, proving it was waterborne and saving countless millions of lives. Yet the darkest chapter of the Shambles doesn't have a heroic ending. It lies inside number 35, the home of Margaret Clitherow. In the late 16th century, during the brutal religious crackdowns of the Elizabethan era, Margaret converted to Catholicism. She used the hidden medieval core of this very house to harbor outlawed priests and secretly celebrate Mass. When authorities raided her home in 1586, the pregnant mother refused to enter a plea to protect her children from being tortured for information. Her punishment was unimaginable. She was taken to Ouse Bridge, where the executioners unhinged her very own front door from the Shambles and laid it on top of her. They placed a sharp rock beneath her back and loaded the door with heavy weights, pressing her to death. It took 15 agonizing minutes for her to die, and her body was left there for 6 hours. Today, the Shambles is celebrated as a triumph of preservation and beauty, but beneath the romantic leaning timber frames lies a stark, haunting reminder of the grim realities of medieval survival and the profound cruelty humans are capable of inflicting on one another.